Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, while the center of the United States deals with a powerful winter storm, I want to take you out west to get things started in this video, because deep within that trough that's pressing through the mid and western part of the United States, we've actually set ourselves up with a situation in California that's highly sensitive to fire. What I mean by that is the Santa Ana winds plus the very low relative humidities here in the Central Valley of California still have red flag warnings out, and the threat for fires is high. Yesterday we got this on satellite. That's the Bryceburg fire here just kind of directly to the east of San Francisco in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And this incredible picture was captured and widely shared on social media. And I love this picture because it shows so much cool stuff about the atmosphere. You see this disk of smoky cloud in through this area. That disk right there represents a relatively stable layer in the atmosphere. But the heat from this fire has pushed through that stable layer and convectively broke through it. And even on top of this, we were able to produce what are called Pyrocumulus clouds. It's a beautiful image here taken from airplanes showing us some of the neat things our atmosphere is capable of doing. Now, the smoke from those fires are going to be spreading through the Central Valley throughout the day today on Thursday. But also notice where that smoke is spreading. It's being ingested into this deep low pressure system that is basically racing through the Dakotas later on today and causing a lot of problems there. Right now, that low on the back side of it, the temperatures have really plummeted. This was valid about 3 o'clock this morning. We already saw between a 10 and in some locations a 30-degree drop in temperatures. And this front will be pressing to the east quickly, replacing these warmer temperatures out ahead of this with some much, much colder air. The amount of snow that's already fallen, well, this is just looking at the last 3 days of accumulation. As this system barreled through the northern Rockies, we saw snow in Spokane, snow that moved through parts of the Rockies and Idaho, and then as it got into Montana, out into the plains where they picked up 6 to 8 inches of snow. Now, this was only valid through last night at 7 p.m., and so a lot more snow has since fallen in through this corridor, including some thunder snow in parts of Wyoming. But our all-hazard weather map kind of tells the story here. Winter storm watches and, of course, a large area of winter storm warnings here that we're going to really hone in on understanding the snowfall amounts coming out of the Dakotas in Minnesota here in the next few minutes. But where that colder air is sneaking through, we have freeze warnings out for a big section of Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. And then getting down here, these are our frost advisories all the way into the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. Meanwhile, out west, still have our red flag warnings. Our fire threat is high. And the Willamette Valley, which is right in through here, very productive region along the I-5 corridor, another hard freeze warning out for those folks. But the only other thing across the country would be this low that's sitting just off the coast here, which brought some heavy rain to the coast yesterday, but some strong winds again today for that area. Now watch the progression of this front. This is amazing. This is through 5 p.m. this evening. Excellent example for all those synoptic meteorology classes across the country here of diagnosing exactly where fronts are and the changes around them. But as this front stretches from central Minnesota through western Iowa all the way down to Oklahoma, I'm concerned right in through this area later on today for the threat of severe weather. And as this front presses through, watch the temperature change as we get into the overnight hours on Thursday into Friday morning. This is 6 a.m. Friday morning, now cutting through Wisconsin, Illinois, down into Arkansas and Texas, maybe getting all the way to the Gulf Coast here. See that? That front gets all the way to the Gulf Coast by the time we get to about 10 a.m. on Friday. Presses through Michigan, Indiana, the Mid-South, getting through Tennessee, Kentucky, of course, down toward New Orleans by the time we get into 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening on Friday. But I want to get all the way to the end of this to show you where the NAM model is putting in the really cold air. It's trying to advance near freezing or freezing temperatures through Illinois, southern Wisconsin, maybe over into northwestern Indiana. And that is a bit of a farther advance than we had seen in this really cold air through Saturday morning recently with our other modeling techniques. So for example, if I play for you out here, this is the NBM, the National Blended Model. This is Friday morning's low temperatures. This is now Saturday morning's low temperatures. And the biggest change I've seen has been in parts of southern Wisconsin, Illinois, southern Missouri. This area now bringing in a greater threat for patchy frost at this time. So we're going to watch this carefully throughout the day on Friday to see if those temperatures do hit that freezing mark in through here. It is a deep freeze on the back side of this with temperatures in the teens in parts of Nebraska and the Dakotas and, of course, Wyoming, Montana. But I want you to notice that the low temperatures here where we're getting all this heavy snow are hovering right here in the upper 20s and lower 30s, and that's going to be important for understanding our liquid to snow ratios. By the time we get into Sunday morning, there's our low temperatures. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and next Friday. And that's something I want to talk about because the heavy snow that is expected to fall in this area, it doesn't look as though it's going to be there for the rest of the season, thank goodness. But as the temperatures moderate middle and end of next week, we will have a flooding problem from that snow in that area. So putting this all together over the next 9 days, we have 2 systems to watch in the near term. System number 1, we're getting ready to describe in great detail. That's the one that's bringing a lot of the snow in through here and the severe weather threat to the south. There's a kicker, another shortwave coming through here Monday into Tuesday that brings in more precipitation to the eastern Corn Belt after the first system pushes through. Both of them leave a boundary that kind of stalls out in this area, bringing some much needed rain to parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, but also down there into Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, a region that had been dry. And even though you see things dry here in Georgia through the Carolinas and also northern Florida, we do have some precipitation coming through that area. I'll talk about it in a few minutes. Each one of these systems tends to collect here in the northeastern part of the United States, keeping that area quite wet as well. And the west coast, well, after an extremely wet September, we are not slowing down, and Typhoon Hagibis is about to cause some major problems for the Northwest, not as a typhoon, but as the remnants. Now, early this morning, we were seeing a lot of very active thunderstorm activity moving through the middle part of the United States. This was lightning strikes about 4 o'clock in the morning. And this is going to be an area that's going to have a repeat chance of more storms later on in the day. And this is what I'm talking about. By the time we get to about 4 o'clock this afternoon on Thursday, our system is now well developed, brought snow from Colorado, getting into parts of western Nebraska, and then, of course, the western 2/3 of the Dakotas. As you go east, there will be a transition over to some sleet and freezing rain, and then early in the day when all the warm air is still out ahead of this, much of this in Minnesota will be falling in the form of rain. But as we progress through the afternoon and evening hours, I'm going to watch this corridor for a frontal squall line that pushes through, maybe bringing in some heavy rain, maybe some locally severe weather. Frontal rain band out ahead of this, moving through parts of Illinois as well once we get into the evening hours today. But this is the problem with this storm system. Watch the north central plains. You will see that as the storm system develops and moves through Minnesota, it gets to northern Minnesota, and then that's where the stalling begins. You see now as I get you out Friday evening and into Saturday morning, it just sits there and spins in that area as its main frontal rain band presses through Michigan, getting into Indiana, Ohio, and down through Kentucky, Tennessee, and all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Now, about the only other thing going on during this time period was the widely scattered rain right up there in coastal parts of the Northeast, with that system hanging out on the East Coast. But this is going to sit here and spin with some very strong winds in the near term. And the problem is our snowfall amounts may top 18 inches in through this area. We may have overdone some of the snowfall amounts here in parts of western South Dakota, maybe not seeing, 13, 14, 15 inches. It could happen, but I'm just saying I would expect more widely 6 to 10 inches there. But notice this comes back into Wyoming and right down here to all of those cities along the front range of the Rocky Mountains. So kind of a nasty end of the week for that area. In fact, this whole region in through here. So big time snow. And the problem is this snow will be a wet snow. Overall. So our temperatures are too close to freezing. And what I don't like about it is I have to add into this. We'll take a look at this. This is Friday, 4 o'clock, getting you into, let's just get into, here's Friday, 4 p.m., excuse me. As that low is reaching kind of maximum strength, look at the strong winds on the back side of this. So any crop still standing in this area, if we put down any wet and heavy snow on it and then blast it with these winds, we're having major problems here. These same winds on Friday are sweeping through the corn and soybean canopies into Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. And that's going to zap out some of the heat in that area such that we are going to, instead of allowing the heat to be trapped in the canopy, once we get to really cold temperatures on Saturday morning, it's not going to be there, and as a result, making us more of a risk of frost in this area that I'm kind of highlighting here. So very, very strong winds with this system here, and of course with the system just off of the coast here of the eastern side of the United States. So let's go right over and see the progression of our next 2 systems here. We've already seen through 7 a.m. on Saturday. So here it is, our deep low sitting here, the rain now pushing through Michigan into the Ohio River Valley and down toward the southeast. Now, as that system stalls out, the problem for the southeast is it doesn't bring in a good enough front here to lift air to produce precipitation. So nothing in the near term. But I got you all the way out to Saturday evening. And you'll notice that all the way through Sunday morning, so from Friday through Sunday, the system moves from north central Minnesota just over here to the Lake Superior. Very slow mover, multi-day rainfall, snowfall event, and some very strong winds on this system. So what are we watching after that? Well, as that one slowly sits and decays, it does leave a frontal boundary stretching in through here, possibly bringing in some rain for some folks that desperately need it. But the kicker I mentioned is here by Monday evening, and it then comes through this upper level shortwave, initiating another low by the time I get into Tuesday midday, such that by Tuesday evening, we've now pushed that low over parts of Michigan, bringing in more rain here, and rain into the eastern Corn Belt that eventually collects here in the northeast. Now that's the system that might possibly bring a better chance of rainfall by the time we get into Wednesday of next week over here into parts of the south. But look back here. While the midsection of the country gets a little bit of a break, the northwest is getting hammered middle and end of next week. And I want to talk to you about why that is the case. Because when we look out over the 4 to 10 day time period, system 1 and 2 are now pushing east, leaving their boundaries sitting down here. We need the rain down in that area. But this could be a return to much more normal, even at times drier air for this 4 to 10 day forecast time period. But with Typhoon Hagibis disrupting the flow, what is coming into here into the northwest goes right into the midsection of the country for the heart of week 2, and that lights this area up again. And I hate to have to say that because I know how difficult it has been to get toward harvest in this region, but we're looking at a very wet week 2 at this point. Now, this is adding insult to injury. I put this in my long-range forecast yesterday, but you can see that the storm systems moving through the country hitting this region have just had a very wet September. In fact, North Dakota having its wettest September on record. It's the same thing for parts of the Northwest. The storm systems taking aim there, well, they've had a very rough end of their season, including early season snow, a lot of heavy rain, poorly timed rain, and freeze events. Where we've needed it has been over the southeast. Look at that, West Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, all having their driest Septembers on record. And it's going to take quite some effort to get precipitation into that area in the next 10 days, as we just saw. The tropics are no help. This is from the National Hurricane Center. We're watching 3 different areas, but these are all non-threats to the United States. About the only thing in the tropics that's messing with us is Hagibis. There's an animation of it over there on the right. But the storm track from Hagibis brings it over Japan early this weekend, and then look at it get absorbed into the jet stream flow. And that is the problem. Now take a look at this. This is amazing. Okay, here is our trough that's sweeping through and stalling out, becoming stacked over Minnesota by Saturday morning. At this point, the cold air is really in place in this trough. But let's take your attention right back here. That blue that you see right there on the edge, that is Hagibis. And the problem is Hagibis gets drawn in, as you may have just seen, into this trough. Now, as trough number 1, the winter storm we're seeing today and tomorrow, moves to basically through Ontario toward Quebec, here's the kicker. See that one there? And that one sweeps through Monday into Tuesday, bringing the threat for more rain here in the eastern Corn Belt. Meanwhile, look at what Hagibis has done here near the Bering Sea and the leading trough that's in the Gulf of Alaska. Those two things are teaming up by next Thursday, taking aim on the Pacific Northwest, and then doing this. And I hate to show this, but by the 20th, we seem to go right back into that same pattern. And you know this one. I have not shut up about it since February. Ridge over the southeast, trough coming through in this area, and that just makes this area I'm kind of shading in through here very active with weather. And that's why the week 2 forecast looked the way it did. Had Hagibis not been there, I think we would have continued to see a drier pattern after these next 2 systems would have moved through. And that would have been ideal for letting folks recover from the winter storm and get a crop out of the ground. Unfortunately, Hagibis has thrown a massive monkey wrench into the flow. So over the next 5 days, we're once again off my color bar in terms of temperature anomalies. That is the cold air tucked into that trough. As that trough slowly in the 6 to 10 day time period gets moved over here, we do see the cooler weather still sitting in that area. That's mostly because of the snowpack there. But as I said, I do expect that snow to melt once we get out into the middle and mid of next week. But showing the 11 to 15 day time period, we are right back in to that same thing. Trough here, ridge over the southeast, active in the midsection of the country. And that is not good news. I wish I didn't have to share that. I'll finish with a bit on South America. We have known that throughout the month of September, our soil moisture anomalies seen down here were a major deficit, one of their driest ends of their dry season that we've seen. The rainfall has come in mostly here in the Amazon and has left a lot of eastern Brazil, this area, very, very dry. It's also been wet down in Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, Uruguay, and northern Argentina. But we've our slowest planting pace in the last 6 years because we're waiting on the moisture to return. Now, one of my favorite maps, which unfortunately on the website I get it from, they're having some troubles, I guess. We can see the return of the moisture that's happened in the Amazon and in parts of eastern Mato Grosso. But the only other places that are wet are down here in parts of Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, and I believe this is Santa Catarina down here. But very dry in Bahia, Tocantins, Goiás, and eastern Mato Grosso. So still needing more rainfall to get that crop going. Argentina's been struggling with some drier weather as well. The early corn planting is about 6% off the 5-year pace. And soybeans have really not got going yet. I just want to show you a forecast. Even though the southern and western regions have already started off dry, the Argentine government is forecasting for October, November, December that the western and southern growing regions, again, this is Buenos Aires right down here, that province, showing up on the drier side of things in their long-range forecast. And this is certainly echoed with some of the long-range forecasts from the European model as well. But right in through here, Santa Fe, Cordoba looks to be near normal. So we're waiting. South America's having some adversity as they plant as well. We'll keep a close eye on it and keep you up to date with all of our forecast videos. But with that, I think I better wrap this one up. Thank you for your attention. I hope you all have a good end to the week. Keep a close eye on that winter storm in the midsection of the U.S. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow and all of next week. Thank you.